Hello lovelies, today we're going to be taking a look at Heartless for the Anyworld adventure game, tabletop role-playing system. Some of you may remember me and T-Shirted Historian interviewed the main creator a while ago over on T-Shirt's channel. T-Shirted Historian, go over and subscribe. Trying to get to 1,000 subs there, and it's the Week in Geek on there tonight. If you're watching this the day it came out, every Saturday. So yeah, full disclosure, we interviewed the guy, we backed his project. We'll be playing this at some point on Sunday as like a tester. It's a nicely well presented game. It's a generic role-playing game system that can be used for just about anything. You can find the review of it on my channel if you want to go and find that. But the creator was nice enough to send me the Heartless adventure. So there's a few other things besides disclosure to get out of the way. Adventures are probably my least favourite thing to review, because you can't really review them without giving away spoilers. They're also something that I generally prefer not to buy because I feel that I'm always better at creating my own adventures, and my improvisational style doesn't fit with preset adventures. So I tend to be a bit more judgmental of adventure books than I might otherwise be, and I'm always looking for how they can be useful in other ways beyond the adventure so that there's added value. Otherwise, adventures are just a sort of one and done. I also do have a weakness for clean, clear graphic design, and I like black and white, not only because it's cheaper to commission and to print, but because I often think it's just the better way to present these things. I mean, the comic 2000 AD had its heyday when it was printed in black and white on old leftover newsprint, so maybe that's left a lasting impression on me. Anyway, this is a smaller form book, sort of journal sized A5 if you prefer. There's about 70 odd pages of material here. There's no RRP, so I can't tell you what it goes for if you want to buy it, or where to buy it, but I'm sure if you search Anyworld tabletop role-playing game system, or Netherborn Games on drive-thru or somewhere, then you'll find it easy enough. So yeah, this adventure is called Heartless. The clue is in the name, perhaps, what it's about. And what it is a small-town American horror adventure set in the mid-1980s. So that is always an appealing period for horror games, because so much seminal horror fiction and so many seminal horror films were created in the 80s, and that vibe is also just Stephen King, for example, was probably at his apex in the 1980s, and James Herbert and Graham Masterton and others, Sean Hudson even, if you prefer things more on the splatter side. And this certainly evokes a lot of that, and a lot of the more recent sort of nostalgia bait horror, the remake of It, for example, or Stranger Things. You know, there's certainly a bunch of aspects to this which evoke all that. The American small town is always a great setting for an adventure, because it is enclosed and encapsulated. We've all seen God knows how many films, TV series, and so on that are set in small town America. So it's something that globally everyone can tap into. There's two ways you can go with adventures, I think, with the setting for them. Something that's so familiar that you all know how it works, or something that is media familiar but distant enough that you can kind of wallpaper over the absences in your understanding. So we all know the TV version of American Small Towns, from Eureka, The Void, you name it. And it is a horror staple, from things like Slither. So yeah, it is familiar to most people wherever you are in the world, but it is just slightly different enough that if you make mistakes in your presentation, so long as it seems just about right, then you can get away with it. It's similar to my concept of plausibility in game design, where you try and make things so that they're plausible, not realistic, but plausible. It is for Anyworld, but you could easily run it for anything. Wretched Darkness would probably work very well. A lot of the NPCs and a lot of the pre-generated characters have some unsympathetic edges to them, or vices. You can play it supernaturally or not supernaturally, but the whole thing is based around some historical murders. It's roughly 10 years ago, from when all this started, when someone was going around murdering people up and down the Oregon coast, and eating their hearts. And then there may or may not be copycats, there may or may not be something supernatural at play, but whatever the case, the similar kinds of murders have started up again. And I can't really give away a lot more without spoiling it, and I'm not going to do that, so I'll have to talk in more general terms. So it's set up over days, and there are certain activities and incidents that you can get involved with over those certain days. That slowly builds towards a climax. There are various things that you can get involved in, and if you wanted to, you could easily pad this out with regular police work. The game pretty much assumes that you are all playing deputies attached to the local sheriff's department, or other characters who are attached to investigation of some sort within the area. And you basically get led along from murder to murder, so it's somewhat railroady. But that's just the nature of the game with published adventures to an extent anyway. There are different twists and turns and dead ends and so on that you can follow to gather more information, but there isn't really a way of solving it early, unless players get massively lucky or have pre-read the adventure. So it might be unsatisfying for some, but I think there's enough material there and enough twists and turns and dead ends that players won't necessarily feel like they're being railroaded, and that's more important than whether they actually are being railroaded or not. You'll gradually get to know the town. The one thing that doesn't really work for me necessarily is that you're supposed to be playing deputies who have been here a while and should know the town, but as players you're going to be coming in as noobs and you're not going to know the NPCs without asking, and the games master is not necessarily going to be au fait with absolutely every detail of the local town, at least not immediately, even if they read and reread the book. So that can create a disjunct between how you're supposed to be interacting with the game world and how you end up actually interacting with the game world. Now it all builds up to a climax. The climax isn't particularly specific, so it is open for you to interpret. And all of that, the adventure and the climax, and the scene setting, takes up about 50 pages, meaning that the remaining 20 or so pages is additional material. So there are ideas for further adventures, further supernatural entities and so on, if you decide to take the supernatural route, that may prey upon the area. There's a bunch of plot twist ideas as well, which I like. So you could use this as the starting point for a campaign based around this same town. And if you do go with the supernatural element, there is very definitely a plot seed that could build up as you go along through adventures, with continually running into these supernatural elements. though it may descend into parody or seem a bit ridiculous if you're not careful. The pre-statted characters are fine, so it's ready for a convention game, though I think running this adventure would take longer than a normal RPG slot at a convention. That's what, 2, 3, 4 hours depending. You get some nice maps and a quick little guide to people in the town, which will make things a little bit easier. So yeah, I mean, I know that's an unsatisfying review really, because I can't go too much into it, but yeah, Ritual Murders, small American town, 1980s, shades of Stephen King. In terms of style, I love the art, I love the design. The layout leaves me wanting a bit, somewhat. So when you go down to this kind of scale format, you probably need to reduce your font size a bit. This looks like point size 12 to me. You want to go to 10, maybe even 9. It just makes the text flow better when you've got smaller pages. Also, this is all justified text, which means you end up with big gaps, which to me is unsightly. I know opinions differ on this. I much prefer left justified text, even if it ends up jaggedy on that side, because it's just the text flows better and it's easier to follow. So that is a nitpick, but it's my nitpick, and I'm the one doing the review, so I'm going to be nitpicky. But otherwise, yeah, it's good. I would say it's above average, and considering it's an indie studio, you know, it's pretty good in terms of style. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 for style. In terms of substance, adventures always suffer, but if we judge it within context and we consider that there is the additional material at the back, the additional supernatural enemies, the additional plot hooks, and the way in which this can be used as a seed to start a longer horror campaign, then I think that the substance is pretty good. More substantial than much larger books from, say, Wizards of the Coast, which are adventure campaigns, because there is very little reusable or expansion material in those books, so they have limited reuse. This has more. So in terms of substance, I'm gonna have to say 4 again, actually, but more than I thought I was going to give it. So a pair of low 4s for scores. So that's 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. It's recommended. If you picked up Anyworld, then I think this is useful as an example of how they see you using the game and some of the concepts that they introduced within the game. So yeah, it's certainly worth picking up, and it would also work for Blood as an adventure with a bit of conversion work. It would work for Wretched Darkness. It might work for Invisible College. Anything slightly gritty, slightly supernatural, but not high-powered, it would probably work for very well. Even a Storyteller Hunters game, it would probably work very well for. So, there you go. Zang.
Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
Neverwhere is a book by Neil Gaiman and a TV series from 1996, which has also been produced as a radio play and as a graphic novel. I secured permission in 1997 from Crucial Films and Neil Gaiman's agent to produce a semi-official Neverwhere role-playing game, provided that it not be done for profit. With the Neverwhere RPG, you can follow in the footsteps of the Lady Door and Richard Mayhew Dick in exploring London's mysterious underside, the Twilight world just out of sight of normal people. Beware of Knight's Bridge, avoid the Seven Sisters, be cautious of Turnham Green, and walk the byways of the floating market. Neverwhere uses the description system, a bridge between descriptive prose and dice mechanics, to let you really bring your words to life. Available for free at drivethrurpg.com.